Colorism, also referred to as shadism, manifests as a form of prejudice or discrimination in which individuals are treated differently based on their varying skin tones within their ethnic or racial group. Unlike racism, which typically involves the subjugation of one group by another group or the belief of racial supremacy, colorism underscores the complexities of discrimination by highlighting how skin tone can influence people's experiences in every facet of their life. So today we're going to talk about it. What skin color are you? And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. But without further ado, let's get started. Colorism has its roots in the violent history of colonialism and slavery. In societies shaped by colonialism, such as the Caribbean or the United States, myth of white racial purity and favorable treatment for lighter-skinned individuals perpetrated a system where light skin was equated with higher status and respectability. The origins of colorism can be traced back to European colonialism, where it was strategically used to create division among enslaved Africans. Colonialists propagated the idea of the proximity to whiteness was ideal, fostering a social hierarchy based on skin color. This divisive tactic was clearly exemplified in the preferential treatment awarded to lighter-skinned enslaved individuals. These individuals were often assigned the less grueling indoor domestic tasks, while the darker-skinned counterparts were relegated to the harsh conditions of outdoor field labor. However, it is important to note that while lighter-skinned individuals were relegated to domestic duties, they also often found themselves in closer proximity to their enslaver. This closer contact heightened the risk of abuse and assault at the hands of their enslavers. This practice of assigning roles based on skin color did more than deepen divisions within the enslaved community. It also undermined their collective solidarity against their enslaver. By granting certain privileges to lighter-skinned individuals, enslavers incentivized a form of internalized oppression and competition among the enslaved. This hierarchical system of favoritism and discrimination thus perpetrated the myth of white racial purity and legitimized a social structure that valued lighter skin. Throughout history, the impact of colorism has been profound and far-reaching. A great illustration of this is the Creoles of color in New Orleans. I discussed this more in depth in my One Drop Rule episode. The Creoles of color emerged from generations of intermixing among Europeans, Africans, and indigenous people, thus occupied a distinct racial category between white and darker-skinned blacks. This intermediary class functioned as a buffer, reinforcing white dominance while relegating unmixed blacks to the lowest social spectrum. Creole children often received legal recognition and even emancipation from their white fathers, a factor that enabled many Creoles to ascend to positions of relative privilege, forming an elite social class. This privileged status fostered a sense of superiority among Creoles over darker-skinned blacks, even though they had their own African ancestry. One of the earliest manifestations of colorism was a specific use of cutoff tests based on skin color, notably the brown paper bag test. Though the origins of this test is not entirely clear, it gained prominence in the 20th century Black culture as a stark indicator of social stratification. The test involved comparing the individual's skin color to a paper bag. Those whose skin color was darker were deemed too dark, thus denied certain privileges. This arbitrary line reinforced the belief that lighter skin was more advantageous. Parallel to the brown paper bag test were discriminatory measures such as the comb test or the door test. The comb test gauged the coarseness of a person's hair, with the objective being that a comb should pass straight through without obstruction. The door test was used in some Black clubs and churches and involved painting the door a certain shade of brown, restricting entry to those darker than the door. These tests served to dictate the acceptable levels of Blackness and contributed to stereotypes that darker-skinned individuals were less intelligent and thus more ignorant. This preference for lighter skin was not only maintained during slavery, but also perpetrated in the post-emancipation era. For instance, lighter-skinned women were marked as Negroes fit for domestic service, further entrenching the value of lighter skin. Access to skincare products and grooming services were often significant, as impoverished darker-skinned women were limited in their ability to maintain certain standards of beauty, thus influenced how they were treated. These discriminatory practices extended beyond the Black community itself. Historically, lighter-skinned individuals were given access to job opportunities and social mobility that were largely unobtainable to their darker-skinned peers. For example, job advertisements in the mid-20th century revealed that Black job seekers often highlighted their light skin as a qualification to enhance employment opportunities, aiming to reassure white employers who harbored biases for darker skin. This dynamic facilitates the formation of an upper class of Black families that were predominantly light-skinned, therefore reinforcing this association between light skin and privilege. As a result, a disproportionate number of light-skinned men and women became business leaders, clergy, teachers, artisans who served as early community leaders. Examples of this are Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, James Weldon Johnson, and Walter Francis White. This desire for European features and lighter skin extends beyond the United States and is prevalent in other regions, where it's often intertwined with class rather than solely white supremacy. For instance, in parts of Asia, this association between light skin and social status dates back to pre-colonial times. Traditionally, lighter skin signified higher social standing due to its association to indoor living. Historically, the ruling class had lighter complexions, and the darker skin was linked to outdoor labor and peasantry. This created a long-standing belief that lighter skin was a marker of privilege and elevated status. Similarly, in historical Europe, pale skin was also a symbol of nobility and untainted lineage, reinforcing notions of class and exclusivity. Terms like blue veins or blue blood signified an autocratic background and a lifestyle shielded from physical labor. This appreciation for paleness further cemented the social structure where skin color was deemed an indicator of an autocratic exclusivity. However, in stark contrast to these historical ideals, contemporary Western values have undergone a significant transformation when it comes to skin color. In modern times, tanning skin among white individuals epitomizes leisure, affluence, and an outdoor lifestyle. This modern preference for a sun-kissed complexion symbolizes the luxury of vacations and privilege, having time to achieve and maintain a proper tan. This shift starkly contrasts with the historical association of tan skin and outdoor labor and lower social status, and reflects how society values and norms continue to evolve. In today's society, historical biases continue to manifest across multiple domains such as employment, education, criminal justice, and healthcare, perpetrating an inequitable system that hinders true progress. The pervasive impact of colorism is evident in the criminal justice system. Studies have revealed a stark contrast between penalties based purely off of skin tone. Studies show that darker-skinned individuals face longer prison sentences for identical crimes and an increased likelihood of severe punishments, such as the death penalty. These disparities highlight a systemic issue of racism and colorism within the legal system. Economic disparities are equally troubling, with lighter-skinned individuals often finding themselves in a more financially advantageous position. The wage gap between light-skinned and dark-skinned Latinos exemplifies this. In the United States, light-skinned Latinos on average are paid $5,000 more annually than their darker-skinned counterparts. These economic inequalities impact opportunities in business, the housing market, and overall socioeconomic mobility. In healthcare, colorism results in a considerable disparities, with darker-skinned individuals frequently receiving lower quality care, leading to poor mental and physical health. This health disparity is compounded by limited access to quality healthcare services and discrimination within medical institutions. Lastly, media and political arenas are not immune to colorism. Media representations and cultural standards frequently highlight lighter skin tones, influencing perceptions of both beauty and worth. This contributes to internalized racism and diminished self-esteem among those with darker complexions, and further marginalize darker-skinned individuals, reducing the visibility and their influence within media and political spheres. In the end, colorism is deeply rooted in the histories of colonialism and slavery. It remains a pervasive and insidious form of discrimination that continues to shape social dynamics across the globe. The legacy of colorism goes beyond historical influences and continues to influence darker-skinned individuals' perception of beauty and worth. Addressing and dismantling colorism is going to take an ongoing, multifaceted effort to recognize and challenge and transform deeply held societal biases to foster a truly more inclusive and equitable world. Thank you. This has been One My Black History. I'm your host, Country Boy, and I hope you like the story of colorism. If you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at myhistory.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by me coffee, Patreon page in the description below. I'd like to thank all my Patreon subscribers. Without you, none of this could be possible. I love you all, and peace.